Are you starting to make more business presentations either online or on stage in person? Well, if you are, listen up to this episode because I'm going over 10 tips to make your business presentations world class. Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Lifelong Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership, and I'm so glad you're here sharing this time with me. This episode, we're going to take your business presentations to the next level. So before we jump into that, I want to remind you that you can find the podcast on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, but also you can find us on YouTube in video format on the Three Pines Leadership YouTube page. And of course, I'll remind you again, you can always drop me a line on Twitter. I'm Coach Molly with an E. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so let's get into my 10 tips for making your business presentations world class. And you can translate these skills to other areas of your work, business, life, etc. So the first thing is to know and understand your audience. I used to work with a speaker who was dead set on using the exact same PowerPoint and the exact same presentation wherever she went, regardless of the audience. And she was always struggling at closing enough sales at the end, at building enough leads in the end, etc., etc. And I'll never forget. She would always struggle with reading the room. That's where we spent a lot of time focusing. And I realized that it had nothing to do with her presentation skills. And it was entirely based on the fact that she wasn't tailoring her presentations to her audiences. So when you are invited to speak for a company, do all of the research you can. Ask them tons of questions so that you understand who is your audience and how you can best serve them. If you don't understand what their problem is, you can't start to build them a solution. And that's how you make your presentation world class. That's how you step up and beyond from just providing your business opportunity. What you need to start doing is understanding your audience, figuring out what their problem is, and finding a way to solve it. That's going to be different for every single audience you have. So make sure you do the footwork, and it will be absolutely worth it in the end. The other thing I want you to do is tell more stories. I know, it can be really difficult, and sometimes it can feel like you're wasting time, but I need you to understand that people remember your stories way more than they remember your list of tips or your business idea. I need you to understand that. And it's as simple as telling a story. And that story doesn't have to take a ton of time. It doesn't even need to be a story about you. As long as you can teach the lesson through a story, that is where the power is. So get used to telling stories in every aspect of your life. Now let's start talking about your actual slide presentation. Some of you absolutely hate slides. I know, that's totally cool. But for those of you who do use slides, I need you to rethink the way that you've been doing it. I need you to only use one major idea per slide. Otherwise, people are going to be focusing on your slides and they're not going to be focusing on you. So go through your slide decks, figure out how many times are you listing off tons of information. Could your presentation be stretched out to a multitude of slides so people can be following along with the information rather than splitting their attention between you and the slides? Hmm. We're also going to start looking at what kind of visuals we're using. Our brains as humans are wired in a way that is wonderfully connected to our visual senses. We remember a ton more information by things that we see, by charts, by photos, by graphs, by representations of text in different formats. That is what we need. So don't just list off information. Use photos, use videos, use a multitude of different visual media in your presentation to really enrich that presentation and add to the experience for your audience. At the same time, though, I also want you to kind of reel in the noise, per se. So once you've gone through your slides, you've figured out how many pieces of information are on each, you've added in lots of visual stuff, I want you to go through and edit. So I want you to go through and do what I'd like to call a noise audit. Figure out, is there a banner that doesn't need to be there? Are the backgrounds of your slides distracting? You want to make sure that you're presenting your information visually in a way that is easy to capture, quick information right in the visual space. But you want to do this without kind of distracting people with too much clip art and stuff like that. All right, the next one is going to be hard for some of you. I know it was definitely a challenge for me early on in my speaking career, but I want you to keep it simple. We will have a tendency, once we reach that expert space, we will have a tendency to want to go on and on and on and use jargon and really show our expertise. But what I need you to do is remember the first thing I talked about in this episode. I need you to remember to recognize your audience. And if your audience on a regular basis doesn't use the jargon of your industry, then don't use it in your presentation. You need to speak at the level of your audience, but provide them the information they need. So if you're talking to a bunch of scientists in research and development, you're going to have a different vocabulary than you are if you're speaking to the consumer market, for example. So recognize that and speak to the level of your audience. But make sure at the same time you're not falling into that tendency to kind of show off your knowledge. Keep it simple so that you're empowering your audience with this new information. I am a firm believer in learning from others, by learning from role models and learning by example. So look at speakers who are really doing amazing in your industry, or speakers you come across online. Check out what they're doing and use those observations in your own presentations. I know an incredible coach online, McCall Jones, and she runs, her entire program is all about charisma hacking, and she has these daily live videos. I absolutely adore them, where she breaks down the charisma, the voice tones, the character voices, etc., of all of these different incredible speakers. So if you're looking to increase your own repertoire of speaking and charisma techniques, I definitely recommend checking out McCall Jones' Charisma Hacking. She's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. I can't recommend her higher. All right, the next thing I need you to do is I need you to make those presentations really, really nice and then throw them away. Not really, like, don't throw them in the trash or anything, but when you're practicing your presentations, I need you to practice them without your PowerPoints. God forbid your presentation doesn't work, your slides don't show up. Don't get into the habit of going, oh, I don't know anything. I haven't memorized. I don't know what I'm doing. I was going to be reading off my slides. Get out of that habit, because God forbid your slides don't show up, number one. Or number two, what's more likely to happen is your slides are going to be up there and you're going to be reading off of them. Remember, you're the one you want your audience to be looking at, not your slides. Your slides are there as extra information, as bonus content. You want to attract the attention. Keep the attention on you, so make sure that you are confident, you are excited, and you know your presentation inside and out. Now, before you even walk into your presentation, when you're still preparing, I need you to do an extra. It's a lot of work, but it's absolutely worth it. What I need you to do is I need you to list off all of the possible The next thing I need you to do is in your preparation stage, while you're rehearsing, I need you to make a list of all of the possible objections people might have to what you're trying to sell them. I need you to list all of them off. And now, once you have a list, I want you to come up with proofs and solutions to each and every one of them and add those to your practice. Have people throw them at you. It's what politicians do when they prepare for debates, and it's what world-class business presenters will do while they're preparing for their presentation. So you should too. Go through, figure out what the objections are, come up with solutions to them, and have that ready to present. And the last thing, the greatest secret of them all, is to have a call to action at the end of your presentation, a very clear, very specific call to action. And have that call to action be tracked with measurable analytics. So, for example, what I do is at the end of a presentation, I will have a call to action to a lead page, for example. They'll go over to my opt-in page. They'll be filtered into a very well-designed funnel page that has one call to action on that page. So they have come to the page. I want their email address. They can put it in or not, and then proceed forward into my world. One call to action, one thing I need them to do, and then I can track people who have landed on the page and then people who have actually opted in. Those are trackable metrics. That way you can actually compare your presentation apples to apples, I guess you could say. I guess I didn't think that one through. All right, everyone. Those are my tips to make your next business presentation world class. All right, everyone. I'm Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership. This has been the Lifelong Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next episode. And until then, remember, I love you. And be excellent to each other.